The ongoing power cuts have had a negative impact on many sectors. The teachers' union is now calling on the Basic Education Department to produce a plan to supply alternative sources of energy. It says the blackouts are disrupting learning and teaching. The education sector is still trying to recover from the disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. For more on this, we're joined by SATU's Olani Fakude. Thank you very much, Mr. Fakude, for your time. So I can completely understand the impact that load shedding would have on schools, not just in terms of providing sufficient light for learning, but in a digital age, we have to understand that learners are trying to upskill their learning capacity in terms of digital media. But we have to also be realistic in the face of the overwhelming infrastructure challenges that our education department faces. We have schools that do not have sufficient books, schools that do not have sufficient classrooms, desks, seating or sanitation for their learners. So expecting schools to be capacitated with alternative energy sources, it's a big ask. How has the department reacted to your statement?
Well, thank you very much, Anli. Firstly, let me greet you and let me greet the viewers as well. We believe as a union that our call for a very, very firm strategy around alternative energy supplies is actually very, very well meant. We also believe, by the way, Anli, that the challenges that we see currently right now in terms of the energy supply part of it, they really do in actual fact have a very, very negative and adverse impact that we also see happening in our schools. So we engage the Department of Basic Education quite regularly in various platforms around many issues. And we're also correct in saying that we still have got very, very drastic, if one may say, infrastructure challenges. But then, and what we have is that we have a digital divide, a digital gap between the schools that normally have and the schools that do not have. So what we're therefore saying is that we cannot, in actual fact, as educators, expect that the system can move towards embracing 4IR with new skills and others when we do not have a steady energy supply. So what we are saying, it is important that the Department of Basic Education should actually work with other departments that are relevant, such as the department that is related to energy, for instance. They should work with those departments and make sure that at the very least, we can use this particular crisis, because we believe that we have now reached a crisis level. We can use this particular crisis to at the very least, move towards a green energy sources. These are the new skills that are required, and we're saying that it can also be a job creation opportunity as well if we're to look into it properly. So let us come in a collaborative manner, but we are saying that let us also have a climate change curriculum. That is how we also want to see our curriculum being transformed, because we are dealing with new realities and we need to respond effectively.
When we come to government with requests like this, the expectation is also that we can assist government with solutions. How is SATU suggesting that the Basic Education Department provide green energy for schools across such a vast country?
Well, we have made a couple of suggestions already, Anli. And one of those suggestions is that we are saying that the Department of Basic Education must actually work with other departments. But now, the biggest challenge that we're also facing right now as a sector is budget cuts. And when I say budget cuts, not only budget cuts that affect education, but budget cuts actually that affect the entire public service. We call it very clearly and very frankly, we categorize this as austerity measures being brought in through the back door. So it is very important that we have a very, very honest conversation in South Africans about our priorities. And if we're going to say that education is an apex priority, if we're saying that we want to use education to transform society, therefore, we must also make sure that education is properly funded, not just education alone, but other public services. So we are saying, therefore, that there are other alternative means for energy, such as solar, for instance. We do not have a shortage of sun in this country. We might have a shortage of energy, but we don't have a shortage of the sun, for instance. And we are saying that let us look into those particular opportunities. What is important, and is that let us have an honest conversation. Let us collaborate, and let us all work towards finding a very common way towards moving to the future.
I like that you say honest conversation and working together, because this kind of a solution is going to require South Africans very much to get on board. And unfortunately, we have a problem with vandalism of schools in this country. And we understand that, yes, a part of that problem is opportunistic criminals, but another part of that problem is frustrated communities vandalizing schools during protest action. How do we ensure that, for instance, infrastructure like solar panels can be safeguarded from this kind of vandalism? Because we cannot ask government to come to the table with additional budget financing for green energy, for that to be implemented only for destruction of property to once again leave learners in the dark.
You are raising a very, very fair point. In fact, and as a union, we've got a campaign that we call the I'm a School Fan campaign. And it is all really about pulling all sectors of society towards working together to ensuring that our schools are safer. We are also saying that we need a collectively, a paradigm shift really about how we see education. It does concern us, and it does concern us that every time actually when communities protest, they'll protest for potholes, for instance, like we had the ministers talking about the Northwest area today. They will protest for potholes, but then they will decide to go and disrupt a school. And we have seen very, very drastic examples of that. And we have seen also the kind of an impact that has over generations. In Limpopo, in Vuwani, for instance, when schooling was disrupted because of community issues that communities were raising, what we then saw is that we saw how that generation of learners is still dealing with the negative impact of that. In fact, the communities themselves are dealing with the negative impact of that. So we are saying, Anle, let us all work together as communities. Let us understand as communities that our schools are our investment. We need these particular schools, and we need them to be safe so that they can be optimal for learners, for teachers, because it is just us as a country investing in our future. That has been one of the calls that we have made, and we are continuing to make. And one of those interventions is our campaign against violence generally in our schools.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. That was Sathu Fakure speaking to us about a call for the Department of Basic Energy to provide more green energy for schools during the current load shedding crisis.